up, everybody? Ben Razza here for Odd Chopper, bringing you my favorite bet of the day. It's Monday, December 26th, the day after Christmas. I hope your holiday was fantastic. I hope it was better than mine. I will get to where I've been, what we've got going on across the industry, and of course, my favorite bet. But if you're just joining us for the first time, checking out Odd Chopper, welcome aboard. All things betting. This is what we do, from football to basketball to hockey to everything in between. If you like this free content, like, support, subscribe, join us as we build this channel. Last time I saw you guys was Thursday night. We had the over in the Trevor Lawrence rushing yards, and we won instantly. I was feeling great. I was excited to come back Friday. Right after the Jets game, I lost power, and I did not get it back until Christmas. So I have been in the dark, literally, for quite a while. I'm excited to be back. I got sick as well. None of that matters because we're talking all things betting here at Odd Chopper. Now, let's get to the important stuff. First things first. Talk all the time about taking advantage of the deals across the industry. We've got one. You see it on the screen. New users, bet 5, win 150 at DraftKings Sportsbook. If you don't pay over there, if you don't bet over there, link in the description of this video. Go down there, at least click. See what we got going on. Deposit. You take $5, bet it on a pregame money line that has to win. So get a heavy favorite. Turn that into $150 extra money to play with. Then you can make bets like this. Of course, we're going to the game tonight, Monday Night Football. We've got the Colts. We've got the Chargers. We're going to the prop world with Austin Eckler. Let's get into it. We've got the Colts are 4-9-1. They're not a good team. They just blew a 30-point lead last time out. Never seen anything like that. You know why? Because that's never happened before. Just truly absurd against the Vikings. I don't really have a lot to say on the Colts.
The minutes that most confused me yesterday, that I was most off on, was Robert Williams.
I didn't see what he ended up at, but I know that I had a lot of him and a lot of Horford, and it went really poorly.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Stokastic NBA Strategy Show. I hope you guys had a great Christmas yesterday. As you come in, do us a favor, like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We had the great Christmas slate yesterday. And what was really good about the Christmas slate is it's kind of even the games out this week. So we've got 7 games on Monday, even Tuesday and Thursday. They have decent size slates. So it's not one of these situations where we have like a 2-game slate and then a 14-game slate or anything like that. So even more reason to be excited about this week's of basketball games. And also, if you guys have not checked out all the tools we have over at Stokastic.com, 3 days for free if you haven't signed up yet. So that's going to give you the Monday NBA slate, the Tuesday NBA slate, the Wednesday NBA slate, as well as the Monday Night Football contest today. So check that out. 3 days for free. All you have to do is be a new member and either sign up clicking on the link below in the description box, or it's about to be thrown into the YouTube chat. But before we get into all of that, Adam, how are you doing today? And how was your weekend?
Yeah, doing pretty well. Weekend was good. Holiday was good. Got to spend some time with the family, so that was nice. And glad to be back to regular basketball. I had the same thought about the schedule that you said, because like last night watching, I think I was watching like the Memphis game, because like with every game being spaced out, I kind of for a second forgot that there had been 5 games yesterday, and I'm just like, oh man, like tomorrow's probably gonna suck because like nobody played today, and I was like, oh wait, there were 5 games, so maybe we'll be good. And, yeah, I was really happy to see 7 games.
Yeah, and then also, like I said, we've got decent Tuesday slate, decent Thursday slate this week. So balanced schedule, which you and I like to talk about a lot and how it makes for better NBA slate. So I'm looking forward to this week. And the Christmas slate yesterday, you and I were also talking about that a little bit before we started. How did that go for you?
So football went really, really, really bad. Basketball ended up being okay. I mean, I lost money, but it wasn't anything crazy at basketball. Had too much of the Celtics bigs, didn't have enough James Harden. Did some things well. Didn't play James Weissman, which I talked about on the strategy show yesterday morning. That went well. He played 8 minutes. But yeah, just didn't get there, but nothing crazy.
The thing I'm annoyed by, and the Jordan Poole ejection hurt me, but whatever. Like that's just the shit that happens sometimes. The Robert Williams minutes that you and I were just talking about before we started, he played 13 minutes yesterday. I just didn't understand that. It was the player I was most wrong on the projection of. I thought it was a really good spot to get to Robert Williams. It was also something that you and I had talked about a few days ago. I said, I want to be early to Robert Williams as opposed to being late to him. And his minutes were trending upwards. I assumed like, okay, at a minimum, we're getting like 20-ish minutes from Robert Williams. It's not a slate with that much value. And I don't know how the hell he only played 14 minutes yesterday, but it sunk a lot of my lineups.
Yeah, that one pissed me off too because like it's one thing if I project a player's minutes correctly and he has a bad game, I don't care. Like I can't do anything about that. But I give Robert Williams 22 minutes. He played 14. You know, that sucks because I had a lot of him and I had a lot of Horford. And like I looked and Horford played 30 minutes, which is what I'd projected him for. And so I was like, all right, can't do anything about that. You know, had a good amount of Dinwiddie. He played 40 minutes. Can't do anything about that. So I was really upset with Robert Williams and I was mad at myself for Christian Wood because I'd had him at 32 minutes when I did the strategy show. And then I kind of got cold feet. I cut him back to 30 minutes just because I really don't trust Jason Kidd with Christian Wood's minutes. But obviously he went nuts at extremely low ownership and I was still over the field on him, but certainly would have had more if I had just kind of stuck to that 32 minutes. Because even when I talked about it on the strategy show, I was like, I think 32 makes sense because if he's playing well, you can get 36 plus. And if he's playing like shit, you can get like 28. So 32 kind of makes sense. And then I still walked it back, didn't get as much, and he plays 38 minutes. So him and Robert Williams were the two that really upset me.
Yeah. So the Robert Williams, I just didn't understand. And when I knew I was really going to be screwed, it was in like Sam Hauser and Blake Griffin were getting minutes. I was like, oh no, this can't be good. Because just guys that I didn't think were going to be playing, or at least hadn't been playing nearly as much since Robert Williams came back. And then for whatever reason on Christmas, they just kind of decided to nuke his minutes, which is going to be a massive pain in the ass for me going forward, especially when I'm sure he's going to be low owned the next time the Celtics play. And he's going to be playing like 26 minutes and just crushing, and it'll tilt me to no end.
Yeah.
But
Thomas Bryant also, I had already blocked him out of my mind, but he played 19 minutes for whatever reason.
So the Thomas Bryant one, I think he got hurt and nobody reported it.
Oh, okay. I was thinking, I had no idea because I wasn't really watching that game. My family was insistent on watching the terrible football games instead of basketball. So I didn't see what was going on in that game. I just saw that like he had a mediocre first half, kind of started out decent in the second half. And then I looked at the end of the night and I'm like, oh, cool. He just got no more fantasy points.
Yeah. So I think two things happened. Number one, he banged up his shoulder a little bit. And then also the Lakers were down a lot and they just started playing LeBron at center to play small lineups to get more shooting on the court. But at the same time, too, I also think he got hurt in that game. And I have a feeling he's going to end up being questionable in the injury report tomorrow. He was kind of favoring his shoulder points in the game.
Which he had hurt. He had left early the game before.
Yeah. So I think that's what it was, but we'll see. That's just kind of a guess.
The Lakers trying to get more shooting on the floor is quite an oxymoron as well.
Yeah. It's impossible for the Lakers team. There is no, and also Thomas Bryant might be one of the better shooters on the team.
He is for sure a better 3-point shooter than Russell Westbrook and possibly others.
All right, we'll start in a second talking about tonight's 7 game slate. I just want to look up Thomas Bryant career shooting from 3. Yeah, he's definitely one of the better 3-point shooters on his team, actually. 36% from his career and 48% this year.
Yeah, that's a little better than Westbrook.
Yeah, a little better than pretty much everybody on that team. But let's talk about tonight's slate. 7 games to hit on, and we're going to start with the Brooklyn Nets against the Cleveland Cavaliers. And the Nets have been outstanding lately, and they are missing one of the role players today. Joe Harris is not going to play. So starting with his absence, is there anybody that you could see as a value piece that is going to pick up the Joe Harris minutes?
I don't think so. We've been getting kind of weird Brooklyn rotations anyway. I don't think Harris being out should have too big of an impact, because he had been coming off the bench now that everybody is back healthy. So like last game, you did get 25 minutes from Seth Curry. That doesn't have to be the case. Edmund Sumner didn't play at all in the second half there, ended up only playing 10 minutes in the game, which included garbage time. So I think there's the potential for Seth Curry to play enough minutes to be a decent point per dollar value, just because he's $3,400 if he plays 24 to 26 minutes. He's going to project okay, but it's still Seth Curry. You can't be too confident in it. But at the same time, you could easily see those minutes split up a little bit more between him and Sumner. So I think he'd be really risky. I do kind of keep waiting for TJ Warren to have that game. We've seen his playing time sort of slowly creep up. He played 21 minutes, a little over 21 minutes last game, including garbage time. I'm still just waiting for that game where it's like, oh, TJ Warren played 24 minutes at 3,800. Again, it's probably not today, but kind of, a little bit more likely you get those minutes with Joe Harris out, but neither one's going to be somebody that I'm confident in or really building around.
Yeah, and TJ Warren also to echo that point, he's been decent as a fantasy producer this year, especially when you consider he hasn't played in 2 years. So obviously some rust there, but scoring about a fantasy point per minute, not bad. And you would think that probably improves as he gets more games under his belt. So somebody who, depending how much value opens up, I probably wouldn't get to him. But if I was in like absolute dire need of a value play later in the day, somebody who could potentially fit the bill. But now, as far as the pay up options go on this team, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, Ben Simmons, are any of them good looking plays today? And it's just such a tough matchup going against the Cleveland Cavaliers, who play at the slowest pace in the NBA while also having the best defense.
Yeah, a very unappealing matchup. We did get Simmons back up to 28 minutes last game. Would have played about 31 in garbage, had there not been garbage time. So that was good to see, just because we'd seen his minutes kind of jerked around. He's 6,300. There's going to be a ceiling there. Same goes for Nick Claxton at 6K, but neither of them are really going to look like priorities in this matchup, on a 7-game slate. Kyrie at 8,500 is probably the best play from Brooklyn, just because that price tag is still reasonable. You should get 36 minutes or so from him. And we know the type of talent that he has. Durant, always playable as well, but that salary at 10.5, a little bit less appealing, I think, than 8,500 for Kyrie. So I don't think there's any true great plays from Brooklyn, but I think it's kind of a situation where any of the starters are reasonable as contrarian options in tournaments.
Probably one of the least appealing teams on the slate, the Brooklyn Nets. And Joe Harris being out at least opens up the angle of like maybe there's a dart throw we could find, like you mentioned TJ Warren before, but probably one of the least appealing teams on the slate. Anything else you want to talk about as far as Brooklyn is concerned?
Nope.
So let's move on over to the Cleveland Cavaliers then. In Cleveland, another team that's generally been difficult to prioritize anything when this is a fully healthy team. So for Cleveland, Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, individually all have upside, but hard to prioritize any of them. Of any of the pay up options in the starting lineup for Cleveland, Adam, do you view any of them as high priority options?
I think Mobley and Allen at their respective salaries look really good. Do you know why Jared Allen didn't start the second half last game?
I do not know why Jared Allen. Oh, he had, didn't he have, no, there wasn't foul trouble that game. I don't know why.
Yeah, so me neither. I don't know what happened. They didn't start Jared Allen. Mitchell, Mobley, Garland, Okoro all played 2 minutes and 34 seconds and got hockey line changed out because Toronto went on a 14-4 run. So I know that's why those guys went back to the bench, but then they all played the entire fourth quarter. I don't know. I'm just throwing away last game's rotation, basically. Jared Allen has, outside of last game, been playing a ton of minutes. He's only 6,400. He's about a point per minute guy, and he's going up against a Brooklyn team that doesn't rebound well. So I do think Jared Allen looks really good. 6,100 for Evan Mobley is just too cheap of a price tag. I understand that having Mitchell, Garland, and Allen all active is about the worst case scenario for Mobley because, with Mitchell and Garland in, you're losing usage. With Jared Allen in, you're losing rebounding. But 6,100 for a guy that, is still likely to play around 34, 35 minutes here is just a little bit too cheap. So I like both of those guys. And then Garland and Mitchell, you know the type of ceiling that you get with them. I think they are pretty much correctly priced. Garland's been about a fantasy point per minute guy with Mitchell this year. Mitchell's been 1.15 to 1.2 fantasy points per minute with Garland. They both should play around 36 minutes. So certainly playable, but I think the front court with Mobley and Allen is where I would look to get to the most. Kevin Love's price tag slowly increasing. We have been seeing him play, 20-ish minutes more frequently. That's what he was averaging as well when Jared Allen was healthy prior to the most recent stretch where you saw Love sort of being on minutes restrictions. So I do think you probably get around 20 minutes from him at 4,200. But I think Allen and Mobley, the priorities.
Yeah, and I was looking around just to see if there was any kind of news on Jared Allen, but I can't find anything definitive about why he didn't start the second half of that game. So I'm on the same page as you, where I'm just going to consider it a fluke. Like there was no foul trouble involved. I think there was a game early in the year where he might have had 4 fouls in the first half, but that was not the case last game. I really don't know. I think we just write it off as a one-off, and as long as he's in the starting lineup, hard to be all that concerned. He played 40 minutes 2 games ago.
Yeah, he's been averaging like 36 minutes since he came back from his injury. And yeah, if he's not in the starting lineup, then obviously be really concerned about his minutes and also feel better about Brooklyn because Jared Allen anchors that defense. But assuming that was just a weird one-off thing and that Jared Allen is back in the starting lineup, there's no reason to not be projecting him for his full minutes, and it's going to make him look good.
And then speaking of players' minutes who are difficult to parse, what do we make of Kevin Love, who 2 games ago he played 29 minutes, and you start to get the feeling like, oh, look, Kevin Love, over that thumb injury, the minutes are back. He's somebody we could look at as a value option. And then he plays 19 minutes last game. I know his minutes always get jerked around. They go up and down. It's not consistent. But how do you view Kevin Love today? And how do you even go about projecting his minutes?
I think the 19 to 20 minutes is just sort of where he lives mostly. I thought the 29-minute game was just a pretty big outlier, but he's played 22 games this year now where Jared Allen and Evan Mobley have both been active. He's averaged 19 and a half minutes per game. So I feel pretty comfortable now that we've seen him. He had that 24-minute game. He had the 29-minute game. I'm comfortable just going back to that 19 or 20-minute projection on him, which at 4,200 makes him look decent as long as he's not pulling much ownership. He's a 1.13 fantasy point per minute guy in those games. You know that if Allen or Mobley get in foul trouble, Love can play more, which obviously is the dream scenario if you roster him. So he's fine as a low-owned tournament play. At the same time, it's the type of player where if you get a slate where he's pulling 20-25% ownership, it would be like, all right, well, I'll just try and find something else. But I like guys like Kevin Love when they're pulling like 5% ownership. I can expect them to play 20 minutes and they project for low 20s in fantasy points. You are talking about like a 5 to 6x projection on Kevin Love with the potential for more. So as long as the ownership stays down, I think he's interesting.
Anything else you want to talk about from Cleveland?
No.
So let's move on to the Los Angeles Clippers against the Detroit Pistons. And neither of the Clippers didn't play yesterday. They're still resting Kawhi Leonard today. Matchup against the Pistons on the road in Detroit. They've decided to give Kawhi Leonard a rest day, and Kawhi is going to get a lot of rest days going forward as the Clippers try to make sure that he's healthy for a playoff run. So without Kawhi Leonard in the mix, who stands out the most from the Clippers?
So it's a nice bump for Paul George. We had seen him limited in his first game back from injury, played like 32 minutes. Last game against the Sixers, you got 35 and a half from George. So I expect him to be at full run here. Without Kawhi Leonard, his production goes up. So he's just going to look better than he otherwise would. In the games he's played without Kawhi this season, George has averaged 1.25 DraftKings points per minute in 35 and a half minutes per game. So he's somebody that when Kawhi's in, I don't really play much, but he's pulling 21% ownership on DraftKings. He's 9K. He also has that really favorable shooting guard, small forward eligibility. So, and has a good matchup against Detroit as well. Like you said, good matchup, still only a 5-point spread. So clearly, the game can be a blowout, but you shouldn't be expecting it to be one. So I think Paul George looks really good here.
Yeah, and a big thing about the blowout point, because I'm sure people are going to say, oh, this game is going to be a blowout. The spread is 5.5 points for this game. And for reference, the spread for the Portland-Charlotte game later is 5.5.
Right.
The spread for the Bulls-Houston game, 7.5. That's the largest spread. It's just right in the middle of the road. It's hard to consider any of these games to be, definitive blowouts. We always see it on Live Before Lock in the deeper dive. People say, you can't play X player. This game is going to be a blowout. If you really think that, go bet the game because the spreads are never as wide as people think that they're going to be.
Right. We saw it yesterday with Memphis, Golden State. People are like, oh, you can't play blah, blah, blah. And then if anything, Golden State blew out Memphis. But the way I view that is I am not a good enough sports bettor. Well, I'm not a good enough sports bettor for most things, but I'm not a good enough sports bettor I cannot handicap lines better, handicap a spread better than Vegas. I would guarantee that 99.9% of the people watching this show probably aren't even as good at it as I am, and they're certainly not as good at it as Vegas is. So the way I view it, and it kind of goes to what you were just saying, this game has a 5-point spread. Most of the games on this slate have 3 to 5 point spreads. So if you were going to approach a game, and obviously we're just using it as a hypothetical here, but this does come up a lot on shows. If you're going to look at a game with a 5-6 point spread and be like, oh, I can't play guys, it's a blowout, you should just be doing that to every 5 or 6 point spread, and suddenly you just are playing some really shitty lineups because you've decided you can't play guys from half the slate. But I'm not good enough at it to be like, oh, well, this 6 point spread is different than this 6 point spread, and this one's going to blow out and this one's not. So it's just, to reiterate, when you start getting those 10, 11, 12 point spreads, yeah, you probably should be cutting a minute or two off of your baseline projections. But when you're talking 5-6 point spreads across the board, yes, I realize the Clippers are a hell of a lot better than Detroit, but it's a 5-point spread.
So here's something else that I've been thinking about and realized. It to the point you said before, where people, where you said hey, I'm not as good at handicapping the lines as the books. A lot of people just assume they are based on nothing. They just say hey, I've watched a lot of basketball games, I watched a lot of football games, therefore I know everything. That's why so many people think sports are rigged, and why I see it on my Twitter timeline all the time. because it is so inconceivable to people that they could be wrong about the outcome of a game that they just assume it's rigged as opposed to thinking like, oh, maybe the Bucks aren't as good as I thought they were. They just assume that the game must have been rigged.
People also inherently just are really, really bad at understanding randomness.
That's true as well, which we've seen multiple times with, different models, simulations, stuff like that, where, 70% to 30% outcome, 70%, not a lot, but I think a lot of people do tend to see it that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's what, and like it's natural. Like it's not like it's an intelligence thing or anything. It's just it's a weird thing to grasp. But like my dad's doing like a weekly DFS league with people from work, and he needed to win this week by like 20 points to win. So he mentioned it to me, and I was like, oh, like I'll help out. I'm sending him information, and I basically like. I told him to kind of do whatever he wanted, but like just begged him to play Christian McCaffrey. So of course I'm just getting, and he's like, I don't really like Christian McCaffrey because like the Washington defense is good, blah blah blah. I'm like, just play Christian McCaffrey. So of course I'm getting texts the entire game about like how poorly Christian McCaffrey's playing, and like I'm just saying, like I'm like, I sent you a thing basically showing you that 70% of the time he's gonna suck, but that he's also more likely to be good than anybody else. And it's just like everybody gets caught in that moment where it's just like, yeah, but he's not doing well. And it's just like, yeah, that was pretty likely to happen. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't have played him.
Who did he want to play instead?
I don't remember what he had originally. I know he was playing McKinnon. I know he wanted to play Derek. He did play Derrick Henry. I think he wanted to go Josh Jacobs. I don't remember. It was something reasonable at least. But I just was like, I don't care what you do, just play Christian McCaffrey. I was really glad he at least fell into the end zone at the end, so he got double-digit points.
So the other thing too is if you want to play Jacobs, that Jacobs also sucks. So it's not like you wanted to play somebody who nuked the slate. I don't even remember who on Saturday it was that had like the biggest running back games. Yeah, it wasn't like he was like, I want to play Cam Akers, and like imagine if you'd argue with your dad Cam Akers versus Christian McCaffrey, and you're trying to tell him McCaffrey's better, and then Akers just goes for 1,000,000 yards. And touchdowns.
Yeah. So he won anyway, so it was all water under the bridge. But yeah, and to your point about Jacobs, like in the first, I think it might have been the first drive, Jacobs just rips off like a 15-yarder right out of the gate. I'm like, oh man, he's gonna run for 150 and 2, and I'm never gonna hear the end of this. But yeah, he sucked too. But yeah, it was just like the whole conversation. It was just like, and like he's intelligent. He's he should get it, but he just doesn't.
Yeah, I think a lot of people fall into that. And, obviously we're going to be best versed in it because this is what you and I do every day. And I know I could speak for myself. I don't have any skills outside of this. And I think you're probably in the same boat as well. So yeah, I'm sure there are things that our dads could do, like hang a picture on a wall, which I cannot do myself. My dad thinks I'm an absolute moron for not being able to do it. So it kind of goes both ways.
My dad works on computers. He can fix cars. He can do shit around the house. I'm like, yeah, I don't know, man. If you need help with sports, hit me up.
Getting back to this Clippers-Detroit game, outside of Paul George, is there anything else that looks better from the Clippers without Kawhi Leonard out, or just any other plays that are standouts?
Zubats at 5K is just sort of at an interesting price point. He did play 34 minutes last game. That was good to see. Obviously that was a matchup with Joel Embiid and the Sixers. But you have this big Detroit front court as well, where Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren are playing a bunch of minutes alongside each other. Marvin Bagley backing up Duren. So I think barring foul trouble, you should get plenty of playing time from Zubats. He's getting 9% ownership. But at 5K, I think that he looks good. And Kawhi being out helps him a bit as well, because you are taking that additional usage out of the starting lineup, but you're also taking 32 minutes away from the wings. So it makes it a little bit more difficult for the Clippers to play small lineups. They still could if they wanted to. They have no shortage of wings on this team, but it does just sort of increase the likelihood that Zubats plays his full minutes.
So let's head on over to the Detroit side of the game. And you mentioned Jalen Duren. He's somebody who's been popular on some recent DFS slates. Same goes for Jaden Ivey, who has also played a little bit better as of late. But the real key to Jaden Ivey is it just getting more minutes. And it was also something that you had talked about the other day, is for the longest time, Jaden Ivey was a little bit underpriced relative to his upside, but he was playing 22 minutes, 26 minutes, 28 minutes, 20 minutes. We weren't really seeing a ceiling in terms of playing time, but the last 3 games, 33 minutes, 34 minutes, 28 minutes for Jaden Ivey, which has certainly helped to increase his ceiling. So is Jaden Ivey or Jalen Duren, are these players that you're looking to get back to tonight?
Yeah. So we got Corey Joseph sort of back in the rotation last game. He played 6 minutes in the first half. He didn't play it all in the second half. I'm still viewing this as we can project Jaden Ivey for a little bit more playing time than we could previously. Like you said, he had kind of gone through a stretch where over his previous 5 to 10 games, he was averaging like 26 minutes per game, and it wasn't purely blowouts or anything like that. You were just getting these shortened rotations. But since Corey Joseph is only like half and half in the rotation now, you can get a little bit more playing time for Ivey. He played 8 minutes to open the last game. He played 8.5 minutes to close the first half. So again, you're looking at 16.5 minutes there. He got in a little bit of foul trouble in the third quarter, so he subbed out after 4.5 minutes. Then lost garbage time, ended up playing 28. But that was another game where barring blowout foul trouble, you're looking at around 32 minutes for Ivey. So I'm at a point now where like I'm fine projecting him for 30 minutes instead of the 27 that I was giving him not that long ago. And at 5,500, it's going to make him look pretty appealing. Obviously not a great matchup against the Clippers, but 15% ownership coming into Ivey. I'm perfectly fine with that. Jalen Duren at 5,200, 4% owned. I keep kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop and him to stop having these big games because his rebounding percentage has just skyrocketed since he moved into the starting lineup. And it's for the season, he has like a 19% rebounding percentage. As a starter, he's at 23.3%. Some of it probably is him just improving. He's really young. He's a rookie. He's probably getting better. Also, I expect it to come down a little bit, but you're still talking about around a fantasy point per minute guy that is going to give you 28 to 30 minutes if he avoids foul trouble here. So I still think that there is some value on Duren. I think he's kind of comparable to Ivica Zubac in that price range. And then, so those two guys look interesting to me. Bogdanovich is actually pulling 10% ownership on DraftKings. His salary's down to 6,100. I'm fine with that. He's about a fantasy point per minute guy without Cade Cunningham as well, and he should give you around 31, 32 minutes if this game's competitive.
The next game is the Minnesota Timberwolves against the Miami Heat, and shocking, we get to the Miami Heat side of the game, players on the injury report. As far as the Minnesota Timberwolves go, Rudy Gobert has been removed from the injury report. He's played the last couple of games, but they've left him on the injury report. But Kyle Anderson remains questionable. Anderson, who's been dealing with back spasms, he has now missed, let's see, how many games has Kyle Anderson missed? Kyle Anderson has missed the last 3 games, hasn't played since December 18th. So looking at a nearly 2-week absence for Kyle Anderson. If he remains out, are there any players that benefit, or has the pricing caught up at this point?
I think the pricing's pretty much caught up because when Kyle Anderson's out, it's not that it opens up production. It just opens up some playing time. So like you get more minutes from Jaden McDaniels. He's up to 5,100. If he's going to play 34 minutes, that's still an okay price tag, but it's not like it's a glaring value. Austin Rivers at 3,900 is the one that we've been seeing in the starting lineup in place of Anderson. In competitive games, we're typically seeing 35, 36 minutes from him. Last game, we only saw about 25. Either way, it's Austin Rivers. Like I'm pretty much never playing the guy. So those are the guys like most impacted if Anderson is out. Jalen Noel hasn't really seen increased playing time. Like maybe he gets an extra minute or two, but it hasn't made a big difference there. So if Kyle Anderson's out, I think Jaden McDaniels is the guy that like it moves the needle for the most, but it's still a $5,100 Jaden McDaniels.
Yeah, and there was a point not too long ago where I thought he was a really strong looking option when he was about $600 cheaper and Kyle Anderson was first rolled out. Like you said, price has gone up a little bit now. As far as the pay up options, D'Lo, Rudy Gobert, Anthony Edwards, are any of them good looking options to you for this slate?
Yeah, I'm not sure why D'Angelo Russell's salary isn't moving, and I'm not sure why he's never really that popular, but D'Angelo Russell is playing massive minutes without Jordan McLaughlin. And he's out again tonight. You got 39 minutes from Russell last game. He's been averaging 35 or 36 minutes without him. And this is something that we had seen, earlier in the year as well when you were dealing with an injury there. So, Russell's somebody that when this team is healthy, you get like 30 to 32 minutes, but he's playing a ton right now. He's a good point per minute guy. He benefits from Karl Anthony Towns being out. I have no idea how his salary hasn't moved and how he doesn't pull more ownership, but I think he looks really good. Gobert at 70 or at 7K flat looks good. He's getting a lot of ownership. Obviously at center, you always have plenty of guys you can pivot to, but we got a 36-minute game from Gobert last time out. We saw that in his first game back from injury as well. I think projecting him for around 34 minutes makes sense. Obviously he can get to 36. He's done it 2 of his last 3 games, I believe. So he's pulling 25% ownership at 7K. That makes a lot of sense to me. Anthony Edwards, 9,200, 12% ownership looks fine as well. He's playing big minutes. He is a little bit more productive when Gobert is out because you have better spacing. It's easier for Edwards to get to the rim, but he is still just going to get up a ton of shots. He's going to play 38 minutes or so. So I think this is just a pretty appealing team despite a difficult matchup against Miami.
And then talking about the Miami side of the game, I feel like this team, well, give them credit for this at least. they have kind of tightened up their injury reports ever since they got fined. There was the game afterwards. They got fined for putting out stupid information on their injury report. The NBA fined them to be pains in the asses. They put every single player, all 16 of them, on the injury report the next day. Since then, they have tightened it up a little bit. But here's the problem. You can only have so clean of an injury report when Jimmy Butler is on your team. And I know I make fun of him a lot, but he is always hurt. And he has been legitimately injured and deserving to be on the injury report in nearly every single one of the Heat's games this year. So he's questionable. He's dealing with an ankle injury. He left last game early. Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, also injured. He's questionable. Gabe Vincent is questionable. So there's a lot of different scenarios that could play out in terms of who's in or who's out. But do you have any takeaways from the Heat right now, or do we just need more news later on in the day?
I think we just need more information. The nice thing about Miami is we've sort of seen every iteration of what they do, whether it's Jimmy Butler being out, whether it's Bam being out, whether it's the entire team being out and them having 7 guys. We've seen it all this year. So it's never really that difficult to break down once you have the information. It's just a matter of it's 10:30 in the morning, and unless we're going to do like 6 different if-then statements, it's really difficult. I mean, the general overview is that if Bam is out, Butler looks better. If Butler is out, Bam looks better. If they're both out, Lowry and Hero look better. Oladipo looks better. The Martin and Strus pieces get more minutes. Like we know how this goes. It's just a matter of exactly which guys are going to be in.
Yeah, so check out all the stuff we have later on the day. Deep dive, live before lock, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's just hard to know. Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler are the 2 most important players to the Heat. So if Bam Adebayo's out, yeah, Dwayne Dedmon could start at center and end up looking like a really good value option. If Jimmy Butler's out, Victor Oladipo, who knows? He could end up being thrust back into the starting lineup if Gabe Vincent is out again. We just need more information. Yeah. So check out all the content we have later.
Not that it matters right now. Dedmon is out. So if Bam's out, you get the who the hell is going to start at center, whether it's Haslam, Robinson, or Jovic. Part.
And Haslam's also questionable. So just more stuff where it's not really enough information to work off of, which generally ends up being the case for Miami. The difference, though, is this one feels more legitimate to me than some of the bullshit they put out in previous weeks.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Let's move on to the next game then. It is the Utah Jazz against the San Antonio Spurs. From the Utah side of the game, Kelly Olynyk is out. The backcourt healthy right now. The Mike Conley back. I don't really expect any real minutes restriction for him at this point. Colin Sexton, he is also back. So starting with the backcourt players, and then we'll talk about Kelly Olynyk being out. Is there any value to be had in the backcourt at this point? Because I do find it pretty hard to give anybody outside of Jordan Clarkson even north of 30 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I think Clarkson at 6,800 is kind of interesting just because like he does typically play pretty big minutes and that price tag is coming down. But yeah, I mean, with this team getting healthier, obviously you just pretty much always see them become a little bit less appealing. Their last game against Washington, you had Clarkson play 30 minutes, lost about 2.5 minutes in garbage time. Conley was at 27 minutes. Weirdly, Markkanen only played 29. Like you got really ugly rotations in that last game. I'm not entirely sure what to make of it, but Sexton being back, what happened is that Sexton came back and they didn't kick Alexander Walker out of the rotation. If they're going to keep doing that, it's going to be a problem for everybody. If they do kick Alexander Walker out and you're just having Sexton play those backup minutes, then you can get back to where these guys are all playing huge minutes. But if they're going to run a 10-man rotation instead of 9, that is going to be a problem.
Yeah, and I assume that's going to be the case going forward. And it could even be more than that, depending on how some of these games go. We could really see them go deep into the bench. But the front court a little bit easier because Kelly Olynyk is out. Walker Kessler has been outstanding for this team. A little bit more expensive than he was, obviously, when he first moved into the starting lineup. But is Walker Kessler still a player that you're looking to get to?
So first, I misspoke. Utah had been running more of like an 8.5-man rotation. Now they ran a full 9, but not 10, but either way. As long as Alexander Walker and Sexton are playing, it's going to be problematic. For Walker Kessler, still at 5,400, I kind of think he's similar to Duren and Zubats, where, sure, there's some downside risk on the minutes. We don't know that they're getting healthier. You don't have to get 32 minutes from Walker Kessler, but you certainly can. We've seen him continue to start alongside Vanderbilt. If that's going to keep being the case, you have a path to 30 minutes for him. It's a good matchup. Low ownership at 5,400. I think he's pretty interesting in tournaments.
Anything else you want to talk about from the Jazz?
So Markkanen is, I don't really know what to do with him. Like he's 8,300. If he's going to play 30 to 32 minutes, I am not interested at all. But he's been so good this year. And until Sexton came back, was playing 35, 36 minutes. So if he gets 34 minutes, I'd be interested. I just don't know if it's going to be there. But I think he sort of always deserves a mention just because of how good he is.
On the other side of the game, when it comes to the Spurs, very rarely have we seen the Spurs healthy this year. And that is the case for today. Jakob Poeltl could be on a minutes limit. Kind of hard to know because we haven't seen anything definitive in terms of how many minutes he's played. And then also, he's gotten into foul trouble in recent games, which kind of makes it hard for me to know where he's at. But in general, does anything stand out to you from this team? Because like fully healthy roster for the first time in, I don't know, 2 months or something, a month?
Yeah, I mean, it makes the team as a whole less appealing. I'm with you as far as I don't know what to do with the Jakob Poeltl projection, but it makes him look pretty appealing to me in tournaments. So he's 6K. We know he's a good point per minute guy. In that last game, he played 14, or he played like 14 minutes in the first half, 7 minutes to open, 8 minutes. So he played 15 minutes in the first half. Then he got in foul trouble in the third quarter. Then you got a blowout. He played, 2.5 minutes in the fourth quarter and the game blew out. It seemed like he was going to play full run and get to, 28 minutes or so if that game had been competitive. If you're going to give me a 6K Jakob Poeltl at sub 10% ownership, that is pretty appealing to me. Obviously we've already mentioned a bunch of other centers in that range as well. So it's not like I'm saying I'm going to jam in Jakob Poeltl, but I do think there's a pretty good chance he's going a little bit under owned. Outside of that, I don't think there's a ton. Keldon Johnson coming back, cuts into Devin Vassell. Johnson at 7,300, looks okay, but there's going to be plenty of other options. He cuts into Trey Jones, also. So I think, Johnson and Sohan are pulling some ownership. Poeltl, to me, is probably the most interesting. Sohan at 4,500, I'm probably not going to get there, especially if he's popular. He had that big game. He's had 2 big games in a row. I thought he was a great play 2 slates ago when it was like a 3-game slate and he was basically unowned moving into the starting lineup. Then everybody chased that the next game and he had a great game, but still only played 26 minutes. There's nothing that's different about Jeremy Sohan. Like, this team is not shorthanded. They have Devin Vassell. They have Keldon Johnson. Jeremy Sohan, for the year when he has started, has averaged around 26 minutes per game. He plays a little bit more if he's not in foul trouble and the game's competitive, but he is frequently in foul trouble. But he's also around like a 0.75, 0.8 fantasy point per minute guy. So sure, he's going to have, his share of games, but there's no reason you should be looking at these last 2 games from Jeremy Sohan and concluding that like suddenly he's underpriced. Basically, if you've been playing Jeremy Sohan all year, by all means, keep going. There's nothing different about him now than the entire rest of the season, though.
It's probably more similar than people even realize. 26 games played by Sohan this year. He started 23 of them. It's right. The exact same role he's played the entire year. If anything, though, it's worse just because this team is never healthy and they're actually healthy now.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's move on to the next spot, which is the Houston Rockets against the Chicago Bulls. Now, as far as the Houston Rockets go, another team that isn't dealing with any real significant players being ruled out, but we do have Eric Gordon as questionable. So let's start with him. If Gordon does not play, which players benefit? And Tari Eason is not one of them. Everybody should know.
Yeah, I'll say it should be KJ Martin back in the starting lineup again if Gordon is out. To my surprise, Tari Eason played the minutes I projected him for and did not torch me after going on a 5-minute spiel about why he was such a shitty play last night. So same thing. If Eric Gordon is out, KJ Martin started. KJ Martin played about 30 minutes. That's what you should expect. Tari Eason played 20.5 minutes off the bench. Jabari Smith played 34. So you did again see them play alongside each other a bit. Bruno Fernando played 8 minutes. Usman Garuba played 13. Şengün played 27. So you got a pretty much the same front court rotation you've been getting until they kick Fernando or Garuba out of this rotation. You just can't really do much with Tari Eason with confidence. Again, I had said last slate that if he wasn't getting ownership, I thought he would be kind of a interesting tournament option just because he's such a good point per minute guy. But his salary has come up now too, so just not a spot that I would mess with. KJ Martin's salary has come up as well to 4,500. So if he starts, he'd look decent, but wouldn't be the same 40% owned play that he was last slate with Gordon out. If Gordon's in at 3,600, he's like a 0.67 fantasy point per minute guy that should play around 30 minutes. Certainly not anything you're going to be excited about, but from a point per dollar standpoint, he would look okay.
And then as far as the guys who are the more regular Houston players that were rostering, Jalen Green, Kevin Porter, Şengün. Şengün's just going to be difficult on the slate because of the number of center options we have to get to. But between him, Porter, Green, do any of them stand out above all the others?
I think Green and Porter do. So Şengün, he's just another one. Throw him in the mix with Zubats and Poeltl and Kessler and Duren and however many other centers we talked about. But Green and Porter are just pretty fairly priced. 6,800 for Green with shooting guard eligibility. Porter 7,100 at point guard. Porter's about a 1.05 fantasy point per minute guy this year. Green's at about a fantasy point per minute. They both play 34 or 35 minutes. Solid spot against Chicago. They're both pulling mid-teens ownership, and I think that they should. They look very similar. Also, Jabari Smith at 5,300. He's pulling 14% ownership, which I think is a little bit high, but we have seen him playing well or playing better recently, which, when you set the bar as low as he did out of the gate, you can't really play worse. But we have seen him seemingly kind of get his legs under him in the NBA, and that has translated into a little bit more playing time as well. We were seeing him play 28, 29, 30 minutes pretty frequently earlier in the year. You're getting a lot more of those 32, 33-minute games from him now because he's, gotten to where it's not painful to watch him on a basketball court. Overall this year, 0.85 DraftKings points per minute, and that includes, his horrible start to the season. I'm looking now, I don't know, but over the last month, I'm kind of curious to see if his point per minute production has actually gone up, because certainly been playing better. And yeah, he's at 0.91 DraftKings points per minute over the last month. So probably prior to the last month, he was at like 0.77 or 0.8 or something. So you have seen him look a little bit better. The ownership is there, so I don't think there's like a huge edge in going there, but I do think you can project an extra minute or two onto him just because he is getting those extra minutes more frequently now.
Anything else you want to mention from the Rockets?
Nope.
All right, so let's move on to the Chicago Bulls and some backcourt injuries going on right now in Chicago. Alex Caruso, he has a concussion. He is out. In addition, we've got Javonte Green doubtful. Derek Jones also doubtful. So none of these guys are massive pieces for the Chicago Bulls, but this is a really good matchup against the Houston Rockets. And this does open up some additional playing time, especially in the backcourt with the Alex Caruso being out and assume no Javonte Green. So any cheap guys, whether it be Ayo Dosunmu or Kobe White, do you think do look like good plays with the absence of some of these backcourt players?
Yeah, so Dosunmu at 4K, he should start. He played 33 minutes last game. He's not a great fantasy point per minute guy. He's around 0.7 fantasy points per minute, but at 4K, if he's going to play around 30 minutes, he's going to be a solid point per dollar value. You have the potential for more playing time for Kobe White and Goran Dragic, but we didn't really see it last game. And the reason we didn't see it last game is that Nikola Vucevic and Andre Drummond played like 10 minutes alongside each other. I have no idea what to make of that. It was against the Knicks, so it's a big-ish front court, but it's not like it's, the Pistons where they're playing two like true centers, the Julius Randle and Robinson front court. Now you're going up against a Houston team that has Jabari Smith and Şengün. I wouldn't expect a lot of Drummond and Vooch alongside each other, but they could. I certainly didn't expect it last game. If they do that, it just throws a wrench into the Goran Dragic and Kobe White minutes. But I think from, kind of what you can expect 18-ish minutes from Dragic, 18 to 20, and then probably 24 from White. I'll probably give Drummond and Vooch a couple minutes alongside each other just because of what we saw last game, but I don't have much confidence in that being a real thing that they do. But if it is $3,300 Andre Drummond, if he is going to play minutes that are alongside Vooch, is a really, really cheap price.
It makes me like Vooch, and Drummond as a large field tournament play, totally get behind it, but it makes me like Vooch more for this reason, because already it's a good matchup for Vooch. I think he's a reasonable price tag. He's somebody to get to. To me, even if he doesn't play minutes alongside Drummond, he's a viable play today. And then if you get those minutes, he plays alongside Drummond, then you open up the potential for Vooch to play just an insanely high amount of minutes at a price tag, which for him, he has plenty of upside at. And then you have the ability for him to get upper 30s minutes. So to me, Vooch could benefit the most from a DFS standpoint, being that he's already a good play with the potential to be a great play.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I focused on the backup minutes last game, but also Vooch played 39 minutes there. If he's going to play mid to upper 30s, he's going to look fantastic. Even if he plays his normal 33 or 34, especially in this spot, he's going to look good at 7,500. But if he does get up to around 36, that's going to look great. So yeah, I think Vooch is my favorite of the DeRozan, Vooch, Levine guys. Vooch is my favorite play on Chicago. DeRozan and Levine both look fine, as they always do. But I just think that those backup minutes are really interesting because, again, Jabari Smith can space the floor. I don't think it's a great spot to be going to Drummond and Vooch together. But even if they do it for a few minutes, let's say you get 35, 36 minutes from Vooch and 16 to 18 from Drummond. They're both going to look good. Similarly, if they don't go that route, then you are getting, a $4,100 White or a $3,200 Dragic playing a couple more minutes.
And then anything else that we should be talking about from the Bulls before we move on?
I don't think so.
Okay, so we are sponsored by Prize Picks today, and here's a couple of good ways for you guys to get value. So we've got a Prize Pick sponsorship. We've also got a Bet the MGM sponsorship. And if you use our links to sign up at these sites, you are going to get free access to our premium platinum package. So if you're in a state that has legalized sports betting, BetMGM is going to be a book that's available to you. And also sports betting just went live in Maryland, about to go live in Ohio, I believe, next week. And if you sign up at BetMGM for the first time using the link we have below, 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum and your first bet risk-free up to $1,000. If you haven't signed up at Prize Picks yet, which if you are not in a state that has legalized sports betting, there's a good chance you have access to Prize Picks when you sign up using our link at Prize Picks. Match deposit bonus of up to $100. So you put $100 in and they're going to give you $100 on top of that. And in addition, you get 1 free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum. So if you guys have been looking to get behind our paywall and want to get access to our projections, ownership projections, all the tools we have, our new lineup generator, access to our Discord channel, you could do it for free just by signing up either BetMGM or Prize Picks. Just make sure to click on our link when you sign up. You could find those below in the description box. Just below this video, you click on either of those links, and you need that to get credited with your free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum when you sign up. Couple games left to talk about. The next one, the Indiana Pacers against the New Orleans Pelicans. Now, Adam, we have Aaron Nesmith questionable for Indiana, and we have Jalen Smith questionable for Indiana. Individually, neither of them have been massive pieces for this team, but it does create some extra playing time. So are there any players you have an eye on in the event that Jalen Smith and or Nesmith can't play?
Yeah, so I mean, with Nesmith out last game, you got Benedict Mathurin in the starting lineup. He naturally only played 20 minutes, whereas he typically plays like 28 off the bench. But if you were to get him in the starting lineup again at 5,200, he's going to look like a very good value. O'Shea Brissett played 26 minutes in that game. Not something that necessarily has to replicate itself, but there are more minutes available for him if Nesmith is out. He's coming in at 3K flat on DraftKings, so that would potentially be an interesting spot to look at. And then the Jalen Smith news is kind of interesting. He played 23 minutes last game. One thing I want to reiterate here is that he is purely playing backup minutes to Miles Turner. So on the one hand, that is good for Jalen Smith because we had seen a brief stretch where Isaiah Jackson was getting those minutes and Jalen Smith was actually like barely in the rotation. But Isaiah Jackson's back out of the rotation now. So it's the rotation they've been running is that Jalen Smith plays 48 minus whatever minutes Miles Turner plays. At 4,100 for Jalen Smith, typically, that's not going to be very appealing. But whenever you get a game like last game where Miles Turner dealt with foul trouble and as a result only played 25 minutes, that means you're getting like 23 from Jalen Smith. So I just kind of wanted, one, he's questionable, and if he's out, you should get Isaiah Jackson in the rotation. But I also just wanted to reiterate it because if you just look at game logs, it's like, oh, Jalen Smith played 24 minutes. He looks really good. Kind of. Anytime Miles Turner gets in foul trouble, Jalen Smith's going to look good. Anytime Miles Turner does not get in foul trouble, Jalen Smith's going to look bad. Clearly, you're not going to know before a game which one that is. So it's just a situation where when Jalen Smith is popular, I prefer to go somewhere else. When he's not popular, I'll take some shots on it. He's basically Andre Drummond with power forward eligibility.
And then is this a spot where we're going to want to pay up for Halliburton again? He is coming off an insane game. So Halliburton has, in any other year, Halliburton would be a shoo-in to win Most Improved Player of the Year. It is so hard for him to pick up ground on SGA for Most Improved Player because I have bets on Halliburton when Most Improved from before the year. So every night I'm rooting for a big Halliburton game. I'm rooting for SGA to kind of stumble. Halliburton set the Pacers team record last game for three-pointers made. He made 10 threes in a game, and then still SGA had like a 38, 7, and 8 game or something like that. So Halliburton's been ridiculously good, made 10 threes last game. Across his last 2 games, 16 threes made for Halliburton. Just absolutely insane stuff, but fairly difficult matchup for him against the New Orleans Pelicans. Are you going to be looking to spend up for Halliburton tonight?
Yeah, I mean, still always happy to get to him. Like, he's insane. He's insanely good. Has about a 50% assist percentage on the year. Should give you around 34 minutes. He's pulling 10% ownership. I think that makes sense. There's never a shortage of good guard plays to get to or good plays in that $9,500 price range. But yeah, I mean, I think Halliburton looks good.
Anything else that we should be looking at from the Pacers?
I didn't explicitly mention it. I kind of alluded to it when I was talking about Jalen Smith, but Miles Turner is only 6,400, so he's another one of those centers. He should play 30 to 32 minutes if he avoids foul trouble. He's about a 1.2 fantasy point per minute guy, so I like Miles Turner. Don't play him in the same lineups as Jalen Smith.
Moving on to the New Orleans Pelicans side of the game, Zion Williamson back today. He is no longer on the injury report, but he wasn't actually hurt. He was in the health and safety protocols. He's expected to be back in the mix today for the Pelicans, but Larry Nance is questionable. So we have seen some of Nance playing alongside Valanciunas over the last couple of weeks. But if Nance is to be ruled out for tonight, how would that impact Valanciunas with Zion back in the mix now?
So it makes you can still bump up the minutes projection on Valanciunas if Nance is out. It does become a little bit riskier with Zion back because you could conceivably get Zion closing at the 5. We've seen them do that previously in a game where Nance was out, but we've also seen the game with Nance out where and Zion in where Joval plays like 37, 38 minutes. So if Nance is out, you can go from the like 24-minute Joval projection probably to like 26 or 28. At 6,700, any extra minutes are going to make him look again like a pretty good option. Clearly just getting riskier and riskier as the price tag goes up, but still at a point where it's very easy for him to outperform it if he's getting extra minutes from Larry Nance being out.
Anything else you want to talk about from New Orleans?
Zion's really good. He's 10-3. Right now we actually have him projected as the highest scorer on the slate, which I think makes sense. It speaks to the fact that you don't have Luka, Giannis, Jokic, those guys on this slate, but we saw him playing huge minutes prior to his brief stint in health and safety protocols. So I do expect you're getting 34 plus minutes from Zion. He's really, really good. He is also one of the most expensive guys on the slate now.
I just realized that being a factor because Christmas was yesterday. We don't have any of the stars playing today because they try to jam them all in on Christmas. So I was thinking about that. I was looking like, oh, there aren't that many stars to pay up for today. That's the reason why, because we had that Christmas slate yesterday. And then also McCollum overpriced now. I should mention for everybody that Zion's back. Big price uptick for him in the absence of Zion. And now he's just a little bit too expensive for my taste.
Yeah, pretty much the entire team is at a price point now from Zion being out where they're overpriced, except for Joval if Nance is out and sort of Nance if he's in, but I still probably wouldn't go there.
Final game of the slate, Charlotte Hornets against the Portland Trailblazers. From the Charlotte side of the game, LaMelo is healthy now. Terry Rozier is healthy. Dennis Smith Jr. is questionable. If Dennis Smith Jr. returns, is this going to have any kind of impact on LaMelo or Rozier?
I don't think so. It's kind of tough to say because it's been such an unhealthy year for Charlotte. You've had Hayward out, you've had LaMelo out, you've had Dennis Smith Jr. out. So I don't know exactly what the rotation is going to look like. I assume Teo Maledon's minutes disappear, but that's not a lot of minutes. Maybe you start seeing a little bit less Nick Richards and you get back to those like small ball lineups that they were using last year with PJ Washington at the 5 backing up Mason Plumlee. That's one route you could go if you want to get Dennis Smith Jr. more minutes, or you just don't give Dennis Smith Jr. many minutes. I think that's a possibility as well. I think the least likely case though is that they keep a similar rotation and just like give Rozier and Ball minutes to Dennis Smith Jr. That just doesn't make a ton of sense. I think it's more likely that either Smith just doesn't play a lot or they start taking minutes from, Nick Richards and playing smaller. You take them out on minutes, maybe Oubre loses a few minutes here and there, but I think they probably change up the rotation if they want Dennis Smith Jr. to play more.
And by the way, Richards is actually on the injury report. He's listed as doubtful for today. I do wonder if that means we could see a big minutes game from Mason Plumlee. Is that something you think is possible, or do they just give the Nick Richards minutes to Mark Williams?
I think it's possible. That is a good call that Mark Williams is not in the G League. You also could just see JT Thor soak up minutes. There's a lot of ways that can go. Like typically when your backup center is out, I will give a couple extra minutes to the starter. And at the very least, I'm going to be more confident in giving Mason Plumlee his like 28 minutes here. Maybe I'll go to 30s, assuming Richards doesn't play. But the different ways this rotation could go, you could just get Mark Williams getting some NBA minutes. You could get JT Thor in the rotation. You could get, like, especially if Dennis Smith Jr. is back, perfect time to just say, oh, PJ Washington, you're the backup center today. Like, you're going to get these minutes behind Plumlee, and we're going to, play more minutes with Hayward at the 4 and, slide guys down. You can go that route as well. So I don't think Plumlee has to play more, but certainly can if Richards is out.
And then as far as LaMelo goes, because of the point we talked about before with Zion, there are so few pay up options on the slate that if we see more value open up, I'm just going to end up getting to a lot of LaMelo Ball. Number one, I like him. He has a lot of upside. he's played much bigger minutes this year than we've seen the past couple of years. And there just aren't that many pay-up options to get to. LaMelo, I think, kind of by default, becomes somebody we're going to want to play today.
Yeah, the minutes have been really appealing when he avoids foul trouble, which, he does get in foul trouble a decent amount, but you're seeing 36, 37 minutes from him. Whereas last season, a lot of the time it was like, oh, he's going to play 34 or 35 if he avoids foul trouble. So that is a pretty big difference. One thing that does concern me about LaMelo this year is that his rebounding percentage is down considerably from last year. He's got a 6.5% rebounding percentage this year. Last year, it was around 10.5, 11%. I think part of that is probably because you are seeing the Hornets play an actual center for the bulk of the minutes, whereas last year you were getting more of those small ball lineups. So I think that you do probably see balls rebounding increase a bit and just kind of, stabilize a little bit higher than it is right now. But I do think it makes sense that it's lower than last year, and that is a little bit concerning. But that said, he's still averaging 1.3 DraftKings points per minute this year. He is giving you 36, 37 minutes in competitive games. And with Richards out, there's that possibility, like I was saying, that you get more small ball lineups from the Hornets too. So I like LaMelo one way or the other, but that rebounding percentage is something that I've been keeping an eye on, and it's made me project him a little bit lower than other people so far this year.
And this is the game with the highest total on the slate, and one that, while a lot of people might say, well, Charlotte's terrible, the game is going to be a blowout. Well, they should be better going forward with Rozier and LaMelo health. They've only played a few games together this year. The Portland Trailblazers only favored by 5.5 points in this game. So fairly tight spread that we're looking at. And with it also being a high total, there are no key players out for Portland, with the exception being Justice Winslow. But are there any priority plays for you from Portland, considering how good of a game environment this is?
Yeah, say kind of all of the starters. And part of it's because you don't have those pay-up options. Like normally when you talk about Damian Lillard, it's, well, he's not as appealing as, the 11K or 12K guys above him, but he does have that upside where he knocks down a bunch of threes. Today, it's more just like, I think Damian Lillard looks great. He's 9,900. He should play 36 to 38 minutes. You don't have that upper tier of guys ahead of him. I think Lillard looks really, really good here. He's pulling about 13% ownership. That seems fine. You have a $6,200 Nurkic. His playing time has been kind of shitty recently, but I think that it can be attributed to fouls and other kind of just weird things. Like last game, for example, he played 5 minutes to start the game. He played the final 7.5 minutes in the second quarter. So you're talking about around 13 minutes there. Plays 8 minutes to open the third, subs back in with 8 minutes, 7:55 to go in the fourth. Probably going to play the rest of the game, except he picks up 3 fouls, and I believe, and fouls out. So ended up playing 21 minutes, easily could have played, 26 to 28. At 6,200, I think he's a good option. I do think, though, like, I think he's good. I don't think he's, like, markedly better than Turner and Pirtle and Duren and all these other guys that are getting a bit less ownership. So that is one spot where I think maybe you can just kind of shift ownership around a little bit. Anthony Simons is down to 6,500. He's hurt by Damian Lillard being active, but you're still talking about around 35 minutes from a fantasy point per minute guy at 6,500 in a good matchup. So that's appealing. Jeremy Grant still playing big minutes. He's another one. He's hurt by Lillard's presence, but the salaries come down. So it makes him look fine. And then Josh Hart, you're never excited about the production you're going to get from him, but he's mid 5Ks and going to play mid 30s minutes. It's going to make him look decent as well. So I think any of those guys look like good options in a favorable matchup here.
Yeah, and then as for the bench guys, hard to find a lot appealing from Portland because they don't play any of their bench guys big minutes. Eubanks in a time split with Nurkic, they generally play 48 of the center minutes between them, but not enough for Eubanks to be appealing. And then Watford, Sharp, these are also guys who are not playing big minutes. So am I missing anything with role players here?
If you wanted to roll the dice on the Portland bench, I think 3K Keon Johnson, just hope he gets hot. But I don't have any confidence there. I mean, he ended up playing 16 minutes last game, but the way those minutes broke down too is kind of doesn't make you feel great. He played a total of about 5 minutes in the first half. So like they could just very easily play him 10 minutes and he sucks. He's not a great point per minute guy either, especially when you have, the Blazers healthy. So I don't really anticipate getting to the bench, but Keon Johnson is the only non-starter pulling any ownership on Portland. And I think that's the one that makes the most sense. You can make the same sort of case for Shadon Sharp, I guess, because he's also 3K, but neither one of them are guys that I'm really going to want to get to.
And that is going to do it for us today, guys. If you've not done it, do us a big favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. A lot still to change on this slate, particularly the Miami Heat injury report with Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler both questionable. So check out the deep dive, check out the live before lock later in the day, and hopefully we'll see you guys then. Good luck today.